I have, like I'm guessing many of you, been recently recommended a lot of the mystery crochets by Just Vintage Crochet, and I think they are so fun. If you haven't seen them, the basic idea is that she gets a few antique crochet patterns and black out the name of the pattern and any kind of identifying details as to what it is. She randomly draws a number and then she crochets that pattern with no context, no picture or anything. She just tries to follow the directions exactly until we figure out by the end what it is that she crocheted, and she reveals what the pattern name is. I love this idea and I really wanted to do it for knitting. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone like right here that could do the secret part or the mystery part of the pattern. So a few weeks ago, I went through my antique knitting books and I picked out a set of 5 patterns, and I blacked out all of the identifying information about it, and we are relying on my forgetfulness that I do not remember what any of these patterns are, and to be honest, I don't think that I do. I'm going to be doing the drawing of the pattern slightly differently because I'm going to have Nutella help. I have labeled 5 different of her favorite shoes with different numbers. I'm going to let her pick one, and then that's the pattern that we're going to knit. Which one? Wait. It's number 4. Let me take the string off. And now she can have it. We pulled pattern number 4, and according to the instructions, it's going to require about 12 ounces of Berlin wool or Germantown and bone needles number 9. So number 9, looking it up, I think is 3.75 millimeters. I looked through all of my needles and apparently all of my 3.75s have evaporated, so I've gone up to 4. I hope it won't make too much of a difference. It's not going to be exact, but hopefully it'll be okay. I also searched through my stash and I have decided to use this wool. This is Alpaca Cloud in DK weight. I've looked up what Germantown yarn is before, but I think that based on this needle size, so number 5, I think in modern American needle sizes, that this would be the best yarn to use. It's also 100% baby alpaca, so it's not wool, sheep wool. I love alpaca, and alpaca's in a lot of my stash because I have very sensitive skin, so that's what we'll be using, and I think the color is really pretty. Now it says to cast on 32 stitches and knit 3 rows plain. And there's always a question of when they say 3 rows plain, do they mean each stitch is plain, so we have garter stitches in 3 rows, or is it that the fabric is plain and that means stockinette stitch? It's sometimes hard to tell because antique patterns can mean one of either of those things sometimes, and I didn't think to copy out if there were any abbreviations or explanations in this particular pattern book. I didn't think to copy that out, but I am just going to go with every stitch being a knit stitch for now. So let me cast on first. I think that's 32, let me just double check. And now I'm going to knit 3 rows plain, aka knit all stitches for garter stitch. So I will see you in a second when I have knit 3 knit rows. All right, so here are 3 rows of plain knitting. I also like that it's plain knitting. If this is the bottom of something, which it kind of seems like, I tried really hard not to read ahead, but I read ahead a little bit. And it's nice because it won't curl if this is the bottom of something. Garter stitch doesn't curl, so maybe that's a positive thing as well going forward. So now we're at the 4th row, and what it tells us to do is to put the needle into the first stitch, wind the wool between the needles and over the 2 fingers of the left hand 4 times, and again between the needles. Draw the stitch through. Knit all the stitches of the row in the same way. So this seems like I have done a pair of slippers. These were some of the earliest antique Victorian knitting patterns I've ever done, as a pair of slippers where the inside was with looped knitting, and that sounds really familiar to what this is asking me to do. So let's see. Let's try that. Okay, hold on, let's refresh. Put the needle into the first stitch. Now here's the thing, I'm a continental knitter, so with English style knitting you would wind the wool around the yarn like this and then pull that through, and what they're telling you to do is to wind it like this, I think. So let me see if I can figure out how to do that for continental a little bit smoother, because I'm very uncoordinated if I do English knitting. Between the needles and over again the 2 fingers of the left hand 4 times. So I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, and again between the needles, draw the stitch through. So now, next question is, do I just pull this through? And then if I drop it from here, what you'll get is, look how long that loop is. I feel like that's a very long loop, and that's not what it meant me to do. I think what it wants me to do, so let's see, if I 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I hope you guys can see this all right. Let's see. If I put it through here and then I put it through the bottom of these stitches on my finger, and then I draw that through everything. Oh my gosh, okay. At this point, I wish I had a crochet hook. And then I drop it, and then do you kind of see how the loops now look? They're shorter, and there's 4 of them. So that's my guess as to what it wants me to do. And now it wants me to continue to do that for all the rest of the stitches in this row. So this is gonna take me a second, I think. I feel like I'm not doing this right because these are really floppy. Oh, and they can be pulled out. Yeah, that's not right. Hold on. How can I do this better? Let me pretend I'm an English style knitter. So I think I would be like this. And then I put the needle into the first stitch, wind the wool between the needles and over 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again between the needles, draw the stitch through. I feel like it makes, yeah, that makes more sense for me to have like all of the ends of the loops on the needle here, and then I would knit this as one, and then this won't really unwind. Okay, how do I do that? Forgot to knit the stitch. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then like that. Yeah, I think that's kind of how I have to do it. Oh, that's not easy. Okay, here are 2 of my loops so far, and then I have basically all of the other ends of the loops here, but then I'm gonna, on the next row, I'm gonna treat this, each one of these as just 1 stitch. Let me keep struggling through this. Okay, yeah, I think I am happy with that method. Here are what our little loops are looking like so far. I will just keep going with all that until this row is done, and I will check in with you then. It did take me a bit, but we are done with 1 row of loops, so you can kind of see the 3 rows of garter stitch that we did at the beginning there, and the loops are kind of covering it at this point. Now the pattern says knit 5 rows plain, and then we repeat from star until there are 8 rows of loops. So first I'll do the 5 rows plain. Again, I'm reading this as being garter stitch, and like I said, I'm knitting, so one of these loops has all of those ends together, so I'm going to just knit all of those as 1 stitch. So we're not increasing or decreasing the number of stitches here. I still should end up with 32 stitches at the end of this row, and I will show you what that looks like. I'll be back in just a bit. 5 plain rows of knitting later, and the loops still look really cute. I'm kind of worried that they'll come out. They seem a little loose on the backside maybe, but maybe I'm just being a little paranoid. I don't think they will. Now we have to repeat from the start until there are 8 rows of loops. So we're repeating from here until we get to 8 rows of loops. So I think after that it sounds, I read ahead a little bit, it sounds like we're decreasing, but for at least 8 times we have a straight strip of just loopy fabric. So 8 rows of loops, I guess that's 8 in total, so we're doing 7 more. So let's get going. We are 4 rows in, and all I want to do is pet my own knitting. I really enjoy it. So with the spacing of the 5 knit rows in between, or 5 plain rows, it almost perfectly lines up all of the looped rows. So you kind of just get this effect of just a very fuzzy, floofy piece of knitting that I just honestly want to smush my face into. I am now halfway to the amount of looped rows I need. So I will see you again when I have 8 looped rows in total. 8 rows of loops have been knitted. And honestly, at this point, I feel like if I made a matching side, this could be a super cute purse or bag. What do you think? I don't think that that is what this is though, because the next bit of instructions say to knit 10 more rows of loops with 5 plain in between by decreasing. So here we go. Let me show you. I'm at this point, so we're decreasing at the beginning and end of each row of loops by knitting 2 stitches together, and then you cast off. So if we're doing 10 more rows of loop, decreasing 2 stitches every row, that means we're decreasing 20 stitches. So at the end of this, we should be left with 12 stitches. I guess my biggest question would be, when I'm knitting 2 together at the beginning and end, am I still doing loops during that decrease row? Because I'm actually at the next row is going to be a looped row and it will be a decrease row. I think I will do the loops and decrease at the same time. Oh, and before I keep going any further, I mean, I guess it makes sense because you're using a lot of yarn in the loops, but look how much yarn this eats. I am nearly down the entire ball. If I were to make this entire thing, so it says knit 7 pieces the same way, I need to go back to my stash because I'm going to need at least 1 ball per piece of knitting thing that I'm doing right now. It really does just chew up yarn. Okay, so anyway, 10 more rows of loops and we're decreasing every time. So let's start first. It's going to be the first decrease. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're decreasing by knitting 2 together. Okay. Oh, that's a bit tight. Oh, my finger. Circulation. Ah, okay. Probably could do a little looser. Oh, I lost it. Okay, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, gave myself a little bit more room this time. Oh, this is fiddly. But we did it. We did it. Okay, where's the yarn? There we go. Now we're going to just do the same style of loops that I've always been doing all the way across until we get to the end, and we'll knit 2 together again. Okay, let's get to the end of this row. We have our first decrease row done. I don't think that you can tell quite just yet that it is a decrease row. You know what else this is reminding me of? Like the bottom of a mop cover. I feel like if I could make this the size of the bottom of my Swiffer, it would actually be really useful to do some like mopping or dusting or something. Oh yeah, or like a duster. Yeah, that could work well too. All right, anyway, I have 9 more looped rows to do. Hopefully each one will be a little bit quicker because each time I'll have 2 fewer stitches to work on every row across. I don't know that you want to watch me doing quite so much more knitting, so I'm just going to fast forward to when all 10 decrease rows are done. All right, we are done with this first panel and look at it. I love it. It looks so loopy and fuzzy and wonderful, but oh my gosh, the amount of yarn that this eats. So I had to join on the second ball of yarn at this point. If you can see right here, this is where I joined in the second ball of yarn. And I got all the rest of this done and I only have this much left of the second ball of yarn. I went through and I like raided the rest of my stash and I found 5 extra balls. But if it takes me like 1.5 per panel and it wants me to do 7 pieces in total, so that's 1.5, so I need 6 more. I don't have enough is the main thing. I don't have enough if I need to do 6 more to do the rest of the 7 pieces the same way. I was thinking that potentially I could do the rest of the pieces, but instead of wrapping it 4 times, I wrap it 2 times. And then maybe I can use 1 ball of yarn rather than 1.5 balls of yarn per panel. But even if that were the case, I still don't have enough yarn to do the rest of it. Oh, which is just so sad. I want to finish this. What I can do is I can continue to make panels until I run out of yarn, and then I can show you what that looks like at that time, and I can order more yarn so I can finish this off, because I do actually have plans to send this off to one of my patrons. So I do want to finish this, and I would rather finish it properly than improperly. But at least if I make as many more panels as I can with the remaining yarn, I think I can give you kind of a hint of what this is supposed to be, because I think I know what this is supposed to be. I kind of remember this one, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a cape. Can you imagine a cape that looks like this? Absolutely fantastic. Okay, so let's go ahead and cast on for another panel, and let's see how far we can get with the remaining bit of yarn that I have, and I'll order some more. I finished knitting the second panel, and I used slightly less yarn for this because I made the loops a little bit tighter. I think you can kind of tell, and I do prefer not making the loops so tight. I'm running a little close on time though, so rather than making more panels, I decided to move on to what I think is the collar. It's not very clear how wide to make the collar, but I looked at the secondary set of instructions for the smaller cape, and it says to cast on 8 stitches. So I decided that if I'm making the slightly larger size, that I would then cast on 10 stitches. After casting on 10 stitches for what I'm pretty sure is going to end up being the collar piece, I continued knitting in the exact same way as I did for the rest of the panels as the pattern instructs. So first 3 rows of garter stitch, and then a row of loop knitting, then 5 rows of garter stitch and a row of loop knitting. I determined that I was going to make this 21 repeats long, just by kind of holding up bits of it to my neck to see how wide I might need to make it. I thought that at this point it was now high time that I reveal what we were knitting, as I don't have any more time at the moment, but it is back to the trusty Art of Knitting, published by the Butterick Knitting Company in 1892, and it is the round shoulder cape in looped knitting, just like I thought. The bits of information that I had blacked out in the pattern really reference like the collar or the cape, so it doesn't really give me all that much more information than what I was already working with. So I think I still kind of did my best according to what the pattern gave me to try to knit this up as close as possible to what they meant, as I don't have quite enough time to knit all the panels right now to show you, but I did want to show you kind of what this cape would look like at the end. I decided to quickly trace out the 2 panels that I knit onto some muslin and kind of mock up the rest of the 5 panels and what it would have looked like, and pin together the 2 knit pieces onto that muslin piece and pin the collar in place for this kind of halfway final reveal of a round shoulder cape in loop knitting from 1892. Was really fun. I wish I didn't have to rely on my own forgetfulness to do one of these mystery knits. I might have to ask a friend for help in the future, but I really did enjoy just trying to follow the instructions as closely as I possibly could to see where we would get to at the end. I will be finishing the rest of this cape. I just didn't exactly have the time to do it right now. If you want to see the finished piece, then I will be posting this, I think, to Patreon once I do finish it. And if that's a way that you want to support me, I always appreciate it. Another way that you can support me is by subscribing, and if you've already subscribed to me, then you can like this video. I always really appreciate any kind of support that you can give me. Also, let me know what you think about these kind of mystery knits. I have quite a few more picked out, and more that I can ask probably some friends to pick out for me, so let me know if you want to see some more of these in the future. It was also really fun to break out my first ever Victorian ensemble. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon to kind of wrap up my 1840s ensemble. Until next time, bye!